recording. Are there any questions I can answer before we start?
Not really. We've kind of set it up. It's working. We just need best practices really, and how you get the information in there, and kind of how you organize it.
Okay.
And we have 3 places where we keep our knowledge at the moment. Basically, one is in a shared document repository, and then we have a kind of web knowledge-based software, which is kind of 10 years old and kind of not fitting the requirements we require. And then we have a kind of in-house system which we used for procurement and things like that before, and it's also, we store username, passwords and things like that in that system. And what we're finding is with any new engineer that we have, it's extremely difficult to find the information that you need. So unless you know where it is or where to look, it's a massive mishmash where they're all asking each other, or they can't find the information, or the customers are waiting and waiting because it's just become unmanageable. We kind of demoed IT Glue before, which is kind of similar from what I can see. The only problem we had with it is we have clients which are very particular where their data and information is stored, and we can't have any SaaS solution at all, especially where we have no control of the data. So when we saw that this one was we could have on-premise, then it was why we took it.
Understood. Okay. Yeah, so that's one of your issues right now is finding the information. So that is one of the benefits of the portal. The average person, if things are documented in the portal, they should be able to use our quick search bar on the top to find just about anything. For example, like a GoDaddy account, right? You can quickly search that and find all information related to GoDaddy. So the structure that we have in place kind of makes it easy to find information. So you no longer have to search around like you're doing right now with your new users. Now, you mentioned you have a web knowledge base software.
Yeah, it was a kind of open source thing, which they purchased an unbranded license about 10 years ago, and it works. It's just basic HTML kind of filtration system with a tree-based filter. So it kind of works. It works off keywords. The problem is it makes it quite difficult to tie it into ConnectWise, because we use ConnectWise, and it doesn't have any real links or anything like that. So it makes it difficult to actually tie anything together. And there's no actual storage of passwords or anything like that. So that's why we're kind of using 3 places.
Mm-hmm. And the reason why I asked is if you guys have control over that, you may have an option to export that data.
We can.
You can definitely import knowledge base articles. We do have an import process for that. Now our database is also SQL driven. So if you want to create some kind of export files and import them directly into the database, we can definitely help you with that to give you an understanding of how the structure is for the database to do that. I just want to make that clear. We do have import options for knowledge base articles. Now this is a simple Excel document that you can fill out to get that information. But again, our application is SQL driven, so you have options to manipulate the database directly as well.
Okay, that could be useful.
So what I'll do is I'll just start going over the interface. I'll start with the admin console, or the administrative settings. As a regular user, when they click this button here, it goes directly to their personal settings. But as an administrator, you'll get this list of menus. You have 4 different options here. So I'll just go through those briefly. You can also access these menu items as well from the settings menu here. So the recovery and purge. In the portal, traditionally, if you want to decommission an object, for example, if you have an AC unit that's no longer in use, we recommend that you mark the device out. That way you still have a record of the device. If the device is actually thrown in the trash or disposed of, then at that point we recommend that you delete it. And you can do this in out, so all objects. So for example, documents, right? If you're working on a document, you can check it out. Credentials, if there are credentials that are no longer valid, but you still want to keep a history because it has information in it, again, you can mark those out. So going back to the recovery menu, if you were to delete an object, for example, a device, it doesn't get purged instantly. It just gets hidden from the view. You can recover it by going to the device option under that menu. And here you see we've got a list of all the devices that were deleted. If I wanted to, I can click here to recover it, or I can purge it by clicking here, and then I can delete all from the database by clicking here as well. So again, all these object types, you have that ability to recover if they ever get deleted. Now in the portal, we've got these classifications of objects. So you see we've got these different types. So for accounts, we have types. For agreements, we have types. Just about for all object types, we have the types. So to give you an understanding of what that is, if I click on devices here, you see that in the system, we have a total of 332 devices. And then we have a breakdown of all of those devices by type. So in the portal, it's going to enumerate all the objects you have on this left-hand side menu. And when it does that, again, it groups them by type. So that way you can quickly see the SAMs, for example, or the routers. Now we predefine a lot of types for you. And if you go to a company and they happen to not have Active Directory, I don't know why that's there, that's not really a device, but let's say they don't have firewalls, then this won't show up. Unlike IT Glue, I think IT Glue will just show you all the types whether you have them or not.
Yeah, it does.
So here, for example, let's see, we've got quite a few types here. But if I go to a particular company and go over, we've got 32 AD logins. If I go to handover, now the menu is much smaller because they only have 7 of the 20 types that were defined and populated. So again, you can define your own. You can remove the ones that we give you, so you don't have to use ours. Again, they're just suggestions. We can also create groups for companies and contacts. So types are a one-to-one relationship. When you create an account, for example, there's a pull down where you select the type that it is. For contacts, the same thing. When you create a contact, there's a contact type section, and you can say, okay, this is a VP. But you can also create groups as well. So, for example, if you want to define who the problem users are, you can create a group, and then you can add as many users to that group. Doesn't matter what type they are. The same thing for companies. So we have company types as well, and those are defined here. So like your managed services customers. But if you have, if you want to create a group as well, you can do that too. Let's see what else. Any questions so far?
No, it makes sense.
Okay. So now let's go on to security. I'll start off with the bottom option. So here we see we've got security groups. If your company is large enough, you may have different teams. You may have a help desk. You may have the network team. You may have the systems teams or the virtualization teams. For example, you may want to make sure that only the network team has access to firewalls and routers. So you can do that by creating security groups. once you define those groups and put those users into groups, you can, if you want to, you can define global ACLs. So you can say basically all devices that are of device type firewalls, just mentioned. I want to block the help desk. If by default everyone has access to all objects, then naturally the network engineers would have access. But if you have it set so that on a company level that users don't have access to anything by default, because you can set that into security, then you can also just add the network engineers here and give them access so they're allowed. So these are global ACLs. We can set ACLs again at a company level, so that you do that here when you edit the company. Security. So you can allow certain people or deny certain people. This checkbox over here at a company level, if it's checked, then if I'm, for example, if I'm not in any of these groups, there's no groups defined. When I go to access an account, for example, it'll give me a warning telling me that I do not have access, and it will require, it will bring up a form asking me to fill out the form, and the form will email whoever the assigned engineer is or the account manager for approval at that point. But again, if by default this is unchecked, so everyone has access to everything. But if you wanted to, again, you can, since everyone has access to everything, you can say, I want to restrict, for example, the network engine, the help desk from accessing anything on this company. So I spoke about the global security policies. I spoke about company security policies. You can also apply security settings on an individual object as well. So when you edit a router, for example, we also have a security tab here where you can, where you can set restrictions as well. I'm sorry, guys, but I'm getting a lot of feedback on the call. Would you mind just putting your phones on mute? Thank you. All right, just give me 1 second here. Okay, so going back to security, if you want, you can disable the entire portal in case you have some kind of maintenance window, or if you want, or if there's a security issue, you can disable the entire portal. At this point, only admins will be able to log in and access information. Regular users would be denied. You can, again, set additional settings here, whether you want to allow users to add companies. You can also disable entire object types. So you mentioned you already have a knowledge base. So if you're in the process of migrating data, you can disable the knowledge base for now. And as you can see, the knowledge base is no longer in the menu. It disappeared. Also, just so you're aware, when you define users, you can also enable these checkboxes as well. So you can do it at an individual user level, or you can do it globally for the whole company. Now that I have enabled, or I've unchecked this box, the knowledge base has come back. Since you are on premise, you can also set up IP access rules. Some examples of IP access rules, you can state if your IP starts with 10.10.10.0, that means you're in the corporate network, so you're allowed access. And And again, so if you're allowed access under that subnet, you can state that if you're not in that subnet, you are denied access. So if someone tries to access from any other network, be it the internet or just another network in your environment, when they go to the login page, it'll restrict them from logging in. An alternative that you can do as well is you can require two-factor authentication when they come in from an untrusted network. So I'll show you that briefly. So if you enable the IP access list by clicking here, then you can allow Google Authenticator. So again, with these two options enabled, and if you define your subnets in here, then when people try to use the portal from the outside, they will be required to use Google Authenticator to log in. Now we have full logging in the portal, so you can access user logs here to see what they've accessed. You can look at the admin logs here. The admin logs is basically whoever has access to all these objects. The successful logins and the failed logins are here. The access to passwords are here. So this will show you who accessed them and what dates. Also, password changes are listed here. Now, if your organization is large enough, you can make it so a user is an admin, but they're not a password admin, so they won't see these options here. Password admins also have the option to run the password list. Ideally, you don't want to give that to your users, because then at that point they have access to all your passwords. I would recommend that you may want to have multiple admins, but not everyone should be a password admin. So we have a tool also called Portal Sync. Since you're running on-premise, you can use the Portal Sync tool to make an offline copy of the portal. It's a nice to have in case you're running the portal on your infrastructure, and God forbid you have power issues and your infrastructure goes down. You want to have access to those credentials, so you can create an offline copy. Now, you guys are running on-premise, and on-premise, our portal is SQL-based, so you can always replicate that database off-site somewhere else, and we can help you set up a secondary web server to access the off-site copy as well. So we have user management in the portal. I'm gonna go through that in detail. We briefly spoke about security groups already. So in the portal, we have different types of users. We have regular users, we have admins, we have company users, we also have restricted users. So I'll just edit a user to show you the difference between them. So a regular user has access to the entire portal. They're not restricted to any companies in any way. By default, you would want to give all your users access to all passwords. If you uncheck this, then when they go to access credentials for a device or an account in the portal, then they will get a message where the message would say they have to fill out a form to request access to the passwords. An admin, obviously, is an admin, has full access to the entire portal. You can't set restrictions on admin users at all. Company users, if you have clients that you want using the portal as well, recommend that you make them a company user and then specify the company they should access. When they log in, all they see is their company portal. It's the same interface that you would see when you go to that company in the portal. Now, I'm not sure what your licensing is. If you're unlimited, then you can leave the settings alone. If you're not unlimited, you may want to uncheck these three to give them access. If you uncheck these three, then it does not incur a licensing cost for that user. We have two-factor authentication options. If you have radius authentication in your environment, you can enable that. We support Google Authenticator. Any TLTP based authentication system would work with this checkbox here. Duo is one of those type of authentication methods that allow you to use this. We also have a built-in two-factor authentication method that we created years ago. The way that one works is that you would get emailed a one-time password, and you also have to answer a security question when you go to log in to the portal. So, there is a checkbox at the login page to enable two-factor authentication, and you can specify that you want to use SI Portal two-factor authentication. We recommend that you use that if you're on an untrusted network. If you happen to be logging in from a user's workstation that may have been compromised, we recommend that you use this to log in. All right. As I mentioned previously, we also have a restricted user. A restricted user, you can assign them to a company group, which is what I mentioned previously. So when they go to log in, for example, they will only see companies that are in the managed services company group. You can also say that they only have access to one company. You can also say that that they will see companies that are managed by a particular manager or companies assigned to a particular engineer. As I showed you previously, when you edit a company, you can define who these people are. So for example, if you have different teams and they each have their own managers, then you can restrict those users in those teams to the companies managed by those managers. Any questions so far? And I'll remind you, you are on mute.
No, it was good.
Great. And the last menu items for administrative functions. You may have enabled AD authentication during the setup. If you did, this is where you access those settings. We have full branding in the portal, so you can customize the top left logo that you see there. You can even customize the favorite icon. That would be this icon here. And then these details here govern the login page. So this goes under the login form. This goes to this is at the left of the form, and this is on top of this here. So. We have custom fields in the portal, and we went from custom fields to templates. Basically, custom fields allows you to add your own fields to different objects in the portal. So those are individual fields, but what we've done is we've created templates to allow you to group those fields together. A good example of a template is this one here that we defined called SSID. When I clicked on it, you see we've defined 3 sections, and under each section we have 4 fields that we've defined. So, for example, if you create a configuration item of type SSID, you would apply this template to it, and then you would see those fields. Now, again, as I mentioned, this is where you create the sections. This is where you add the fields. You have a variety of different field options as well that you can use. But on this tab here is where you actually apply it. So you can say I want it to apply to all devices, or a device type of copier, for example. You can even say I want it to apply to only copiers for a particular company. So you can get very granular as to how a template would be applied, and you can apply it to multiple objects as well. And just to show you what that looks like, again, this is mapped to the config items, configurations, SSIDs. If I look at that here, I've got a listing here. So this is an SSID, and then here's again, here's the configuration for that. Integration and links. So you guys mentioned that you use ConnectWise. So we have knowledge-based articles at kb.siportal.com that you can reference to configure the integration. With the integration, we allow you to import, companies, contacts, and configurations from ConnectWise. Here as well, you can define the top right links. So if you want to have like a direct link to ConnectWise, for example, you'll see that here. But you can add your own as well. So if you have your RMM, for example, you can add that here. Just again, just providing a quick link button for people to use. Another important thing is SMTP and notifications. You did configure your SMTP settings during the setup, but under this area here, you can configure notification settings on login failures, successful logins, expiring items. So, for example, if you want to know when agreements are going to expire in 90 days, you can do that, or when device warranties are going to expire in the next year, for example. I don't know if you want to do a year, but again, we give you the option to specify how to get notified on device warranties, agreements, accounts, and knowledge-based articles that are expiring. All right. Now you guys are on premise, so you should have licensed your portal. You should have put in your customer ID here, and you should have tested that. Also, after you installed the portal, you should have ran this check for updates option. As new updates come out, you should be able to click this button, and then you can see the new updates that are available. Obviously, you have to have a valid license in order to see those. So. All right, that's it for the administrative menu. Give me a second here. I'm gonna see what we're gonna cover next. Okay, so this is our Synopsis page. When you first log in, you get basically an enumeration of all the objects that are in the portal. So, for example, if I'm working the help desk, I see a ticket about a user being unable to VPN in. I know that those are typically run on the firewalls, so I can just click on all the firewalls by clicking there. And then if I want to drill down to a particular company, I can do that as well. Another way to navigate again in the portal is with a quick search bar. So if I want to look for a blade or a blade chassis, for example, if I happen to know the name of it, I can just start typing it here and quickly get access to that. As I mentioned before, GoDaddy as well. I know a particular GoDaddy account that I need to access. And in the new version, if you're not in a particular company, it'll show the company name here as well. Right now, it's not showing that. When you first log into the portal, you may notice numbers like this next to objects. This basically shows you when objects have been changed or added in the portal. So after you've logged in. So I logged in today. Apparently someone has logged in before me and had made a modification to this particular account. So again, we get an enumeration. If you want to see what's changed in the last couple months, for example, see here for knowledge base, we've got 4 articles have changed. Under agreements, I see that there have been 5 agreements have changed. Also, if an object is brand new, well, not brand new, if it's been in the system for less than 7 days, there'll be a new icon next to that object as well to denote that it's new. I briefly spoke about the enumeration of all the objects here. We also have these search bars as well. So if you try searching, for example, GoDaddy here on the top menu and you've got too many results, you can also use this menu here to drill down further. In the portal, we like to put things into buckets. So all your customers should have at least one site to find. A site would be a physical location. We also have facilities in the portal. For your customers that are much larger, for example, you may have a customer that has a university campus. In that campus, they may have buildings within that campus. So facilities would be those buildings themselves. But you can make facilities anything you want. You can make them suites. You can make them particular rooms. For example, if there's different rooms within a site, and you want to classify those, you can. You can also classify rack cabinets in the portal. So you can, so if you happen to have a data center, you can see all the devices that exist within a rack cabinet. We also have IP networks as well. So this is logical grouping. So you can define your IP networks, and within those IP networks, you can define things like VLAN numbers, you know, the network address. You can even get an enumeration of all the IPs that currently exist in there, and the devices as well. They're enumerated differently because the device may have multiple IP addresses. So for example, here we've got 27 devices and 30 IP addresses. And when viewing these groupings, we also show you all the devices that are in them. With sites, though, for example, let's see, handover. With sites, we also enumerate all the devices, all the services, all the configurations that are assigned to that site through here. We also enumerate all the devices here. If you have contacts that are part of this site, if there's a one-to-one relationship between the sites and the contacts will be listed here, the facilities, IP networks, and relationships as well. So key to all objects in the portal is this relationship tab. You definitely want to use it as you create objects in the portal. So for example, you may have a GoDaddy account, and that GoDaddy account, you use it to manage SSL certificates, and you use it to manage domain name registrations. Ideally, you would document those certificates under agreements, so that way you can see when they're going to expire. And you may document those domains under configurations as domain names. And as you document those three things, the GoDaddy account, the certificate, and domain, you would want to create relationship between at least the GoDaddy account and the certificate and the domain, because that's how you manage those objects, right? So relationships are key in the portal. This is a site, so here we kind of showed the wireless SSID that's in that site, and then some important contacts within that site. We happen to have listed them here before we had the one-to-one relationship I mentioned before. You can also define a diagram for a site. This happens to be a PDF, but if I were to edit this site and I pick a, let's pick an image. We have an image here. Then you can also see the diagram by clicking on this site here, this tab here. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but when I load the site, it gives me a prompt about that I need to pay attention to the notes of this site. For all objects, we have a full Wysiwyg editor. And that's accessible here in the Notes tab for all objects. In this Wysiwyg editor here, it's Word and Excel compatible, so you can copy and paste content from the web or from Word, Excel, paste them right in. You can copy and paste images as well. So for example, if I take a screenshot of the Save button, I can paste it right in as well. So it's a pretty robust editor, but also that pop-up note that we saw when we first accessed that site, that's determined by this checkbox or this toggle button right here.
Just a quick question, Alex. Going back to the diagram where you can put your network diagram, would that support a Visio document, or does it have to be a JPEG or a PNG, something like that?
Correct. It has to be a browser-supported image
Okay.
for this tab to show up. Now, if it was a Visio, again, it will be listed here, and you can definitely click it and download it to view it. But there's no built-in browser support. I think IE may be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a browser issue.
Okay.
Now, I want to show you a device that we have here that's fully documented, so I can go over all of the features. Again, this particular device also has that note. A good example of why you would, the type of note you may want to put for a device is, let's say, if you have a really old piece of equipment and the firmware, not the firmware, the BIOS battery is dead, it requires you to press F1. You may want to note that in the notes section of the device, and then toggle that toggle so that when somebody goes to work on this, they know, okay, I need to look at that before I reboot this device. And similar to that as well, you want to create interactions with all objects in the portal, especially devices. So when you reboot a particular device, you may want to keep a history of that here under the interactions. Under general, when you look at a device, we see some general information as far as location, right? Some racks. If there was a facility, it would be listed here. But since actually it would be listed here. But since we don't have data, we don't even display the field. If you populate all fields, then I think there's about 12 different fields that would be displayed here. Again, as with our menus on the side, if a field is not populated, we don't display it in the portal. Here we can see the main credentials to log into the device for management. You can display on screen, and then you can spell the password if needed. We also give you the option to copy to clipboard as well. So you can copy that password to clipboard. It does use Adobe Flash Player, so if that's not enabled, you'll get a little warning like that. Also, we specify how to manage the device. So when you edit the device, you have an option to specify the protocol that you're using, the IP address, that's the main address for management. You can select that from the available IP addresses that you've documented. And then you can also specify an alternative port number if you need to. We also have an option for you to add your own alternative link. So in the portal, you can, for example, if you have like Screen Connect or some third-party remote management tool, you can put the direct link to that here. As I stated previously, you can define network interfaces, and you can define what IP networks those interfaces are in, so that way you can get a good enumeration. You can also denote, for example, this has a MAC address, so this is also an interface. You can denote which switch port it plugs into. If I were to look at that switch, for example, and I go to the switch port tabs, here I can see all the devices that are plugged into this switch port range that I defined, ports 1 through 24. And again, since we only have ports 1 through 6, 10, 22 through 24 defined, only those are listed here. We also have hardware information as well. Do we have a serial number? Yeah, we do. So in the search bar here, you can actually type those serial numbers and it'll return them. It'll return you the devices that are on there. In the search bar as well, you can search by IP address too. So let me try this. So if I type a portion of it, I get all devices that are in that portion. And as I type more, I can drill down to a particular device, for example. So I think here you can do device name, tag, the asset tag, the serial number, and IP addresses as well. I'm not sure about manufacturer. Optiflex. Optic. Yeah, it'll do manufacturers as well. Optiflex, which is listed here. If you click on this serial number, it'll take you directly to the Dell website. So that way you can try to look up warranty information as well. I think we do that for a couple different vendors. Relationships are key. I spoke about this during the sites. I'll just give you a quick rundown of these that we have here for a blade chassis, which are very common for a blade chassis. You may have one login for the iDRAC that's shared between devices. So here's the iDRAC account. And if I look at that, you'll see that it has relationships to that blade chassis, and then apparently other servers also have iDRACs that are using the same credentials. A service account, whenever you create a service account, you want to document it in the portal and then create a relationship between the applications or the servers themselves that happen to use this service account. Now, there's also a relationship tab or a column here. You do want to state what the relationship is to provide a little bit more information. Some of them are self-explanatory, but if they're not, for example, this person here is listed, you may want to state how he's related to this device. So James is the person that we contact if we ever have to do hard resets on the equipment. Again, third-party maintenance contracts if the device is no longer under warranty, or any other type of agreement that are associated with it. For example, SSL certificates. If you want to track all the devices that are using a particular wildcard certificate, you can do that with the relationship. Additional devices, right? There's the backup server, and then here's some of the blades that are in the chassis. Some related documentation. If you may have created a build book for the server, you may want to document that build book as a document and then list it here. And again, we allow you to create any type of relationship. So here we've got a test KBN, a related IP network. In the portal, you can store configurations for devices. This one just says test, but let me see. Let me look at, I'm going to compare the value in 2016 or 10/2016 to 7/2016. Pick the oldest. And there we get both configurations listed, and then highlighted are those things that were not found in the other configuration. So for example, the enable password was changed sometime between these two dates. And I have them backwards, but you get the picture. You can also upload binary configuration files as well into the portal. So if you happen to have like a SonicWall firewall, you can upload the binary configurations. As you upload them, it keeps the history of those. So if you upload 10, then you'll see 10 different configuration files here. In the portal, we have configurations. So these are device configurations, and we've got these configurations, which are just attributes or objects in the company that are not devices. If you create a one-to-one relationship between a device, for example, this blade chassis and this website, then it'll be listed here. So that's one of the benefits. The other benefit as well is if I delete this device, it will also delete this website because, again, since there's a one-to-one relationship, there's no point in still documenting this configuration. Switch ports I covered briefly. You can also define services. The benefit of that, again, is to do a quick enumeration and allow me to find something. So for example, if I want to find the Exchange server or the HTTP server at a customer network, I can enumerate that here. So we do these enumerations by editing the devices and specifying the services that they run. When I mentioned templates, you can also define templates and apply them to device services as well. So you can say, any device that happens to have a DHCP service, I want to document these particular fields under the template I create. Spoke about interactions, changes. We document all changes to fields. So that alternative link that I mentioned before, it said auth anvil. I referenced Screen Connect at one point, but as you can see in 2015, it used to say use the console screen to access it. You also have the option to specify additional credentials. A good example of this would be a firewall where you have the administrative credentials, so this will be in the general tab because you need access to them quickly. But you may have read-only credentials as well, so they'll be listed. You can list them here. If you define VPN users as well, you want to keep track of those VPN users, you can list them here as well. And these are just some sample templates that were applied to this device. In the portal, I mentioned the password list. You also have your own password repository. Each user does. In the new version, you can disable this if you want, but this basically gives the user the ability to create a repository for themselves of passwords. We give you the option to import and export those or display all on screen. So a good use case for these is, let's say you may have customers that have security requirements stating that each one of your employees has to have their own credentials to log into their systems. Because of that, the user needs to define their own passwords, which no one else has access to. So you would define those under your password list. I briefly spoke about import options. So if you want to import a list of credentials, for example, you can use this Excel document, populate it, and import those in. You can also import documents as well themselves. So if you have a repository of Word documents for your customers, you can fill out this metadata file, specify the file names that are going to be imported, and then there'll be a drag and drop interface where you can drag and drop all those documents during the import process. We also give you the options to import contacts from Active Directory. So if you fill out this form here, you can create what we call an agent, assign it to a company. You can also specify a particular site that this agent is gonna, or the contacts that are found, to put those users in that particular site. And when you download it, if you execute it on the domain controller, or as long as you're a domain admin and you execute it on the domain, it will talk to Active Directory. It will pull all users in contact that have email addresses and will put them into the portal as a contact. The good thing about this script as well is if you schedule it, it will, as users and contacts are removed from Active Directory, it will also remove them from the portal as well. If you download the agent file itself and you manipulate it, since it is a VBS file, you can edit it. You can specify, we give you options to specify OUs as well. So by default, it'll scan the whole Active Directory, but you can state that for users that are in the corporate campus OU, then they'll be put in the corporate campus site. If they happen to be in a different OU, then you can create a new agent, download it, modify it, and say, okay, that's the home office, for example. And then all those contacts that are pulled in will go to the home office instead. We also give you the ability to import from Outlook. So if you happen to have an Outlook contact list, you can export that using your normal export process and then use this file here to import it into the portal. Now it is a CSV file, so you can also use Excel to manipulate this sample file and then import all those contacts into the portal. As far as devices, we give you the same option with Active Directory. What it'll do, it'll connect to Active Directory. It will look for any sites that are defined in Active Directory, any subnets, and map them to IP networks. It'll ask you if you want to import servers and workstations as well. And what it does is it will look at Active Directory, do an enumeration of all the servers, for example, and then try to connect to each one of those servers over WMI. And if it makes a successful connection, then it will bring them into the portal. To see what that looks like, we've, let's see, I think we have some under handover. I'm going to use the command line interface as well. Have you ever put a backslash in the portal? You can use the command line interface for that. You just type something at random with, actually that's a /, then it'll give you the complete list of command line options, and then there's also a little YouTube video But as I mentioned, we do have some devices here that were imported. I think this print server here was imported. As you can see here, we've already got some virtualization information. We've got the IP address. So all of this here was imported using our agent script, IP addresses, some hardware information as well is listed here. The other thing as well that we import are some WMI information. So you can look at all the logical disks, for example, physical disks, so the different LUNs, for example, shares that may be defined on the server, software that's installed as well. So we give you a lot of different options here, processes, services, and they're running state at the time. So again, all of that was brought in because of this import script from Active Directory. If you happen to have an RMM tool, then you can download this version here, put it on your RMM tool, and tell it to execute on all the workstations and servers on your network, so they don't have to be part of Active Directory. It'll push, most of your RMMs can push a script to a machine and have the machines execute them. When they execute the script, then those machines will come into the portal as well. We also have file import options as well. So if you happen to have an Excel spreadsheet with all your devices on your network, you can use either this Excel document or this tab delimited file to import all those devices. I guess the one final thing before I ask any questions is when you first log into the portal, you see this this synopsis or this information screen. This comes up just under, I think, under all objects. You see that? Now we have the accounts listed. If you want to hide that, you can click on the little X over here. And this little message basically tells you that if you want to bring that back, you can click on your name and then say unhide. So again, by default, it steals a lot of real estate, but at least it gives you information about where you are and how to proceed. But we do recommend that you click that little X so that way you don't lose real estate going forward. Actually, the last thing I want to show you is here we see the Synopsis page for Handover Management Company. We see their address information, again, those main contacts, some notes about the customer. You can make the pop-up come up here as well. Remote access information. So if you have an RMM tool, you may just state RMM tool. But if you have a back door as well for that customer, how to get into their remote facilities, for example, or I'm sorry, remote sites, then you may want to denote that here. This Synopsis view here is just for that company. So this company happens to have 2 firewalls when in the entire portal we have 24. We have this Add Objects tab here. So if you don't know how to document, for example, a certificate, you can just start typing certificate, and you can click on this, and then you can start the process of documenting a certificate. So again, we basically enumerated all object types here, and for each object type as well, you can define a description for that object type. So that way you can provide more information than just the object type name. Spoke about relationships. Recent items is those objects that you've accessed recently, and then you can just go through those quickly. We have an onboarding guide as well in the portal. This is just a checklist of things that our customers document in the portal. So we asked feedback a long time ago on what customers document and how they document them, and we just enumerated all those for you here. So as you're documenting a customer, we recommend that you edit the company. You can actually edit this onboard guide and just start checking those things off that are being documented for that customer. And again, if you're a password admin, you can get the password list from here. That's about the gist of it. I can definitely take questions if you have any.
Okay, I think it kind of gives us an overview of how we're going to get the information in there. It's quite daunting because there's a lot of a lot of places.
And just so you're aware, I don't normally do the onboarding because I know the product very well. We do have an onboarding team, but they were busy. I'm actually the CEO of the company, so I went ahead and addressed this for you guys. So we do have an onboarding video that's online as well. I can send you that, which is probably not as thorough as mine. So again, I apologize for that.
Actually, it's really cool. I think it's just daunting because I think we're just realizing how much information we can actually store. That I think in some respects we probably have more than 3 locations of information. I think a lot of things that we could store are in people's heads, or they're in calendar entries, certificates. We generally put in a calendar entry. Which, of course, if that person's away, it can cause an issue. It just gives us a reality check, really, of actually where we're actually storing some of this information. But yeah,
and as I stated, this onboarding guide here, just go through it. One person, at least in your organization, should go through this and say, oh yeah, certificates. Yeah, we currently document that here. So now let's do the process of importing those into the portal using the certificate, this import process here, right? So go through this onboarding guide, get all that data that you currently have in those three locations and just start pumping it in.
Cool. I think you've definitely given us somewhere to start. And I think that's kind of what we needed. And I also think you've given us a bit of an eye-opener if actually you can store a lot more information in there than what we kind of thought you could, which is great. It's cool.
Yeah, and again, it can be overwhelming, so do share this video with others. The only thing that I want to leave you and your team members that are listening to this now or in the future is as they add things to your environment and your infrastructure, as they modify things, as they decommission things or remove, they have to update the portal, right? That firewall is no longer in production, add the new firewall that's in production and click that little toggle or that little drop down menu that says the old one is now out of production. So there's no guessing as to which firewall is now in production, right?
Yeah,
so,
of course. Okay.
Again, as you add, edit, or delete things in your environment, also do it in the portal. I can't stress that enough.
Brilliant. Okay, I think we're kind of happy. I think we can definitely make a start. Thank you very much for your time. It's been very informative.
You're welcome. As always, you can email support@siportal.com if you have any questions. I'm going to post this publicly on YouTube, if that's okay with you. And
that's fine.
And I'll send you a link to that as well. So
yeah, that's great. That's great.
You should be good.
Okay.
All right, Aaron and Adam, thank you for your time, and I hope this has been very helpful.
It has. Thank you very much. Okay.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Thank you.